Namaste. Welcome. These are the 6 steps to overcome the imposter syndrome. So, this is the number one challenge that I hear from most of my students and clients is insecurity, self-doubt, feeling like an imposter, fear of success, but also, of course, fear of failure. So I'm going to talk to you about the 6 steps that I have really synthesized, come down with. And my name is Ashley Turner, yoga teacher, psychotherapist, and let's dive in. Tell me in the comments, by the way, right now, what are the biggest things that hold you back? Because what I find is that people often procrastinate, and their procrastination is really coming from insecurity, doubt. They're holding off on doing something based on an excuse. So we're going to break through and do some mindset work. So these are the 6 steps to overcome the imposter syndrome. Number one is simply to notice. I call this noting. This is a psychotherapy or a psychological tool to observe what kind of thought you're having. You can also think of thought monitoring. That's another tool. But noting is just that. It's to simply observe. This is the thought that I'm having. It's to witness. It's to cultivate the witness mind. We talk about in yoga psychology, in meditation, the witness mind. Just because we think a thought doesn't mean it's true. And we want to pull back and have the observer that's just simply observing the wave of the thought. Oh, there is that imposter syndrome. Oh, and actually stating that to yourself. It helps, and it sounds kind of silly, but it's super helpful to simply state it, to state, there's my insecurity, there's my self-doubt, there's that imposter syndrome, and make a command to yourself to banish that thought or to notice. Just because I'm having a thought doesn't mean it's true. Number two is to feel the fear and do it anyway. So you want to observe the fear, observe the insecurity, observe the self-doubt, imposter syndrome, and then make a choice. Recognize that you have a choice of whether to believe in that thought and act on that thought or make a different choice. So feel the fear, honor it, acknowledge it. I'm going to talk about that in just a second. But then choose to take the action anyway and move forward. Just because you have fear, insecurity, self-doubt doesn't mean you can't move forward and take the action anyway, right? So you don't have to believe in that insecurity, self-doubt. So perfection is not the goal. We live in a society that's really focused on perfection. We have filters now on social media. Everyone sort of gets their highlight reel up on social media, but there is no such thing as perfection in nature. It literally does not exist. There is no perfect symmetry in nature. So perfection is not the goal. We learn by living, and we want to practice. Practice makes perfect. Practice makes perfectly imperfect, is what I like to say. So feel the fear and do it anyway is number two. Number three is, how do you work with that voice? This is shadow work. So the shadow work tool is to personify that voice of self-doubt, insecurity, fear. Give this voice a name. I think of it as personifying it as a character, as an archetype. Maybe it's Doubtful Debbie or Nervous Nelly. I notice when I get anxious, when I'm doing some big project or reaching, stretching out of my comfort zone into some new territory, I get a lot of anxiety. And my anxiety shows up like irritability. And so I'll get irritable and I'll notice I'm picking a fight with my boyfriend or, someone else, or critical of other things in my life, but it's really coming from my own insecurity. So note that, observe that, personify it, give it a character. It's a voice in your head, but it's not the only voice in your head. So you want to give it airtime. You want to listen to who that character is and what they have to say. I highly recommend writing out what that voice needs to say. I'm so scared of doing this. I don't feel like I'm good enough. I never did this. I never finished college. I never got this, certification, or whatever it is that you're using as the excuse in your head. Get it on pen to paper, not on your computer typing, but pen to paper, which accesses the right brain, more creative brain, nonlinear, subconscious material. So handwrite it out so it's not just living in your body, in your brain. You get it out of yourself onto paper, give it air, honor. You want to respect that voice too. It has something to say and it's coming from somewhere. See if you can connect the dots. Does that voice remind you of any voice in the past? Is it a critical or punitive parent or a critical coach? Or, I've worked with clients that, had a ballet teacher or an athletics coach that was super critical or harsh? Where is that deep-seated voice of insecurity and doubt coming from? If you can connect the dots, that's really helpful. So that's the shadower piece of honoring it, respecting it, personifying it, giving that voice a place to live outside of you. Number 4, I call it WWJD, which is what would Jesus do? Thinking of someone that you admire, someone that you look up to, a mentor. Doesn't even have to be someone you know personally. Maybe it's a celebrity, or maybe it's someone that you really admire in the field that you work in. And imagine what they would do. Obviously, to get where the place where they are, they've had to conquer their own fears, doubts, and insecurities. So what would they do? They probably would take the action anyway. They would feel the fear and take the action anyway. So it's a good filter to choose your action based on the kind of person that you want to become, based on those qualities and skills that you want to build. What would this person do? I just, recently watched the Michael Jordan documentary, and it's incredible to see someone of that level of skill and commitment and how hard they work to get there. Nobody gets to massive success without incredibly hard work and facing your own demons. So at WWJD, think of someone that you admire, think of someone that you really look up to, and ask yourself, what would they do? How would they move forward? What do you imagine they do when they feel insecure, doubtful, or afraid? Number 5, remember who you are. You are not this persona. You are not this name, age, bank account. You are spirit. You are spirit having a human experience. So when you connect to your true identity, in yoga we call it Satnam, your true identity, who you are as the mystical cosmic essence, the soul of who you are. That's why I call my program Yoga Psyche Soul, because it's really about the soul's journey. You realize you're so much bigger than your fear. You're so much bigger than your self-doubt. You're so much bigger than your insecurities. Remember who you are. Remember that soul cosmic space. That's why we do all these practices of yoga meditation, to keep plugging us in and hardwiring us into that remembrance of who we really are and what we're doing here in this life. Finally, number 6, how to slay the imposter syndrome, is to connect to a why that's bigger than yourself. This is crucial. I think this is the number 1 tool that I use in my own work. Why are you doing what you're doing? When you can connect to a why that's bigger than yourself, it will propel you forward. It is your passion. It is your raison d'etre, right? It is why you're here. So be in service. Think of, who are you in service to? Why are you in service? What are you offering them? It's not about you. Your work is not about you. Newsflash. It is about the people that you serve. So the more you can connect to being in service, the more you peel off the emphasis on you and your own, I would call it like small-minded, ego sense of self, of whether this is perfect or not. What's more important is you stepping out and serving. People need the medicine that you have to give in the way that only you have to give it. So connect to that why. It's done is more important than perfect. Done is better than perfect, right? People need your work now. They don't need your work in 10 years or 10 days or 10 months. They need to hear from you now, your voice, your skill set, your talents, what you've gone through. So connect to a why that's bigger than yourself, and that will help propel you forward. All right, thank you so much. These are 6 steps to slay the imposter syndrome. Please leave below, what is the number 1 thing that holds you back? What's the number 1 voice of imposter syndrome in your own head? What's your number 1 insecurity, self-doubt, fear? Let's name it here in the comments. Let's connect with each other and create a really supportive space. Thank you so much. I really want to hear from you. What works for you? But give me that number 1 reason below, and I will see you soon.